This is not, it's doing something different. It's not normal.
I'm sorry. I think I may have caused all this problem.
No, no, it's not your fault. I think it's, but it doesn't. Now let's see. Hold on. Maybe this is normal. Let's see. See if it starts up the way it's supposed to. Come on. Okay, that looks normal. All right, we're about to get going here.
Beautiful.
Okay, hi, I'm Meta Spencer, and today I'm going to meet somebody that I'm supposed to have known for about 20 years, Father Bob Holmes. If it's okay for me to call you Bob, right?
Absolutely.
That's great. Now, somehow Father Bob and I have been in the same network of friends for many, many years. And somehow, as far as I know, we've never met. So we have many friends in common. And the reason is that a lot of my friends like to go on excursions to the Holy Land. And Father Bob takes groups of people, I guess, every year to Israel and Palestine. And he's quite a peace activist. I suppose that's the main main reason that we know each other, sort of, at least by reputation. And so we know each other in an indirect way. And today we're going to get acquainted a little bit because he's going to tell me about these trips that I wish I could have taken with him, but I've never been able to do. So, hello, Father Bob Holmes. How are
Hello.
you? Good to finally meet you. Now we have some of your friends that have decided to join us, and we may be having little dings as I say hello to these people and send them on their way because we're not going to invite them in. Okay, so hi. Now let's get down to business because I am very keen to know a little bit about these wonderful excursions that you lead every year. I guess it's every year, isn't it? To
Yeah.
Israel and Palestine. How long have you been doing that?
Well, I belong with the Christian peacemaker teams, and I've been working in our team in Hebron for 20 years. And I've been taking some CPT delegations even right from the beginning. But these ones, the Peace and Justice pilgrimages, have been started in 2006, I think. And we
Oh,
did every year,
oh
except
yes.
except 2020.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there have been some real changes in a lot of people's lives because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
Yes. Well, good. So you really must know a lot of people. Let me inquire a little bit about your own work otherwise, because I think you're a Basilian priest, are you?
Mhm.
Priest, and you, what do you do when you're not traveling?
Well, I was a Brazilian priest teacher for 30 years, and then I got into peacemaking and joined the Christian peacemaker teams, and I was full time at that for 3 years, most of it in Palestine and Israel. And since then, I've been for the Brazilian Fathers. I've been their peace and justice person, and so we now have a committee that is very active, and so that's been my work. It's been peacemaking.
So you do, even when you're not traveling, you're professional peacemaker.
It's true.
I can't think of a better calling. That's wonderful. Okay, terrific. Now, so you've been taking these people on excursions, and how long do these things last, and where all do you typically go? Is it the same itinerary every year, or do you vary it greatly?
Well, we go for about 15 days, and we do visit lots of various peacemakers. Some of them are Israelis, some are Palestinians, some are Jewish, some are Muslim, some are Christian. And we just try to really find out on the ground what's happening and to see, learn from the peacemakers over there. They're kind of our instructors.
So it's not the typical go look at religious sites, a kind of tour that most people take when they go to Israel, and I guess the whole district. But you're going to look at particular people and meet particular people who are peace workers
Exactly.
in that area. So there must be lots of people that we don't hear about very much, right?
This
Well,
is true.
tell me about some of these folks.
Okay.
Who are some of them? I think we've actually I edit Peace Magazine, so sometimes I'm going to have to let Adam in. Adam must have a reason for wanting to join. Yes, Adam. What's up? What? 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 Well, you think that should I start over? I don't know what I've done. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Well, but you think you'll be able to find it? Bob, we're going to have to edit this like crazy to get
I can tell.
this out, you know. Uh, it- well, can we fix it later? Okay. All right. Well, yeah, okay. Uh, yeah, okay. Oh, okay. I'll be able to edit this out. Okay. Thank you so much. All right, fine. Bye. Yeah, he says it's being, I don't know how this happened because anyway, it's being recorded, but not in the normal place. So we'll have to get it later and edit it and put it where we want it to go.
Oh, wow.
Okay, my apologies. And I'm so sorry. Here I am having to remove Murray Lumley. I'm sorry, Murray, I can't let you in. Okay, so we will pick up from where we were. Let's you let's hear a little bit about some of these people because as editor of Peace Magazine, some of the people who've gone with you on these trips have come back full of stories about wonderful people, and I have printed a few of these reports, but none from you. So we will get a more direct a set of anecdotes about some of the wonderful people working for peace in an area where it must be very, very hard to be a peace worker.
It's true. So I'd like to just show you some pictures and tell some stories. Is that okay?
Yeah. Now I think you can do it by clicking on screen share and you
Mhm.
put some pictures up. Do you know how to do it?
How's that?
How to do a screen share?
Yeah, can you not see it yet?
Okay. Have you done it before?
Can you see it?
No, no.
Okay.
You have to hit screen share down at the bottom of your screen. You should have I think a green button saying screen share.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, click on that. All right, good. All right. Now,
I'm screen sharing. Now I got to bring it up. Okay, here we go.
do you have, oh, okay.
Okay, and from the beginning, now you can see it.
Okay, good. All right.
Okay. Well, let me tell some stories.
Sure. Good.
And I do take a lot of people over just to see what's happening there. And we do meet with a lot of various peacemakers. And as we've said, some are Israeli and some are Palestinian, some are Christian, some are Jewish, some are Muslim. So I want to introduce you to just four of them.
Okay.
So the first one I want to show you is Rabbi Arik Asherman. And he's like the prophet Jeremiah. He's a wonderful Israeli rabbi, and he's been a peace activist since before I went there 20 years ago, and he's still going strong. And he's the one who started the Rabbis for Human Rights. And they've been very, very, very active. And so I love working with him. I've been with him on many of his actions when I was with CPT there. And I always try to meet with him if we can. About 4 years ago, he started a new group called Jews and Arabs in Defense of Human Rights. And I'm not quite sure how it evolved, but that's the work he's in now. So I'll just tell you one story. Every November, they help with the Palestinian farmers who are doing their olive harvest. And the reason they have to come, he usually brings a group of people, excuse me, usually Israelis and some internationals and some Palestinian peacemakers, and they accompany the Palestinian farmers. And the reason they have to do it is because they often get attacked by settlers. A lot of these orchards are close to Israeli settlements, and the settlers don't want them there, and they want them to go away. And you can't do much because they're protected by Israeli soldiers, as you can see in the picture below. And they come armed, like that one you can see in the forefront of that first picture.
Now, this
So
lower,
excuse
me, this lower photo is a group of the settlers who are being aggressive. Is that right?
Yes, plus the soldiers who are protecting them.
And that the other guys up at the top, are they also settlers, or who are they?
Those are all settlers. Yeah, they're settlers coming down from the settlement to the orchard, and they're really just trying to chase the Palestinians out of the orchard to stop them from harvesting.
And the orchards belong to the Palestinians.
Yes. But you see, the settlers are already on Palestinian land, but they want to expand their settlements. And to do that, they come down and they try to push the Palestinians out of their orchards. And so if they can't harvest their crops and they can't make any money, and they'll be enticed to leave, to go away. And sometimes it can be very dangerous. And as you can see here, that top picture is the rabbi himself being attacked by a settler. And he didn't stab him. And I asked Arik, I said, why? How come you didn't get stabbed? He says, I think God intervened. He touched the conscience of the settler. And I was saved. Wow. And the one below, one time I was working with him, and he said, I know that when the soldiers tell us that we have to leave and we don't leave, they'll be arrested. So I'm going to leave this time. And so he stood in. He was terrific in terms of being a prophet, speaking to the soldiers and to the settlers. But when they was asked to leave, he started to walk away. And the Israeli police went after him and dragged him back, as you can see. And I took this picture, and he's saying to me, Bob, call my wife.
I did see that knife in the top type photo.
Yes.
The guy with a knife, he's going to stab him in the back.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He spoke to him, or how did he?
He just ran, and he says, as he said to me, God must have protected me and touched the heart, the conscience of that settler at the time. Wow, it was amazing.
Wow.
So he's a great peacemaker. He's still going at it. Every week he's out there, usually on a Friday, because that's when a lot of the harvesting.
He was ordered by the military or the police to leave, and he left, but they chased him or something.
They chased after him that day, yeah. And then you can see they had to carry him back.
Why did they want to bring him back then?
I guess because I think it's because he spoke so strongly, and he really, as as the prophet, he said, what you're doing is unjust, it's wrong, and you shouldn't be defending these people. And they they
And
decided they were going to arrest him.
they wanted to arrest him. Did they
Absolutely.
finally, did they arrest him?
Yes, they did.
Uh-huh. And what did they do with him? After they arrested
Well, they arrested him and several others. Two of our CPTers were arrested also. They take them to the nearest nearest police station, actually. But then they just interview them, record what's going on, and then they release them because they weren't doing anything that's illegal, really, for an Israeli citizen. And and even with the CPTers that were arrested, they're released also.
Now, you should tell us a little bit about the CPT. I know just a little bit, but I think our viewers don't know anything, most likely. The Christian Peacemaker team, you have a number of Americans and Canadians and Europeans, I suppose,
and Australians and Chinese, Taiwan, people from all over the world, actually. And our purpose is to build partnerships to transform violence and oppression. That's how we word it. And so we work with any group that's suffering from oppression, and we try to stand with them and non-violently work for justice and peace. And that's what we do.
Uh-huh. And so there's a lot of presence of the CPT in the Middle East.
We've been in Palestine since '95.
Now, how often are there groups there, and what do they do?
Well, we usually you can serve for 3 months if you're a foreigner, because that's the longest visa you can get. And as we enter, we can't really say we're going to do peacemaking work, so we have to come in as tourists. So we get a tourist visa. And usually we have a team of 5 or 6, but under this pandemic, we have not been able to get into the country. So we actually have Palestinian Muslim peacemakers on our team, and they've been carrying on the work without us for the last few months.
And there was an incident about, 15 years ago, where some people were captured and held and someone died, right?
Yes, that was in Baghdad, and that happened. Jim Loney here in Toronto was one of the captives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know Jim a little bit. I don't know whether you want to tell any of that story, because
not right now.
Okay.
Let me move on to another story.
Yeah, sure. Mm.
Can you see it?
Yes, I can. Bashir and Eve.
Yes, Bashir and Eve are both students, university students in Beersheba, in the Negev. And Bashir is a Bedouin. He's a Palestinian Bedouin. And Eve is a Jewish Israeli. And they work together in a group called the Negev Existence Forum. And it's Jews and Arabs working together in a struggle for equality. And what's happening there is the Bedouins, after the formation of the State of Israel, they were declared nomads, which meant that they didn't have any permanent cities or villages. And so all of their villages are unregistered, which means they're not on the map. It means they don't get electricity. It means they don't get water. They don't get any services except education, which is demanded by the government. So he took us to an unrecognized village called Al-Araqib. And here we are. And that's the sheikh, who's the head of the village. And he's showing us they've made a copy of their ownership of that land, because they say these villages are unrecognized. No, they're recognized, even back in the time of the Ottomans. And however, he's telling his story, and He told us that back in 2010, they ordered them out of the city, out of the village. They're going to, because you're unrecognized, your village doesn't exist. And so they came in and they bulldozed it. Every house.
Wow. My God.
They came back.
Oh.
Right away. And they threw up 2x4s and threw tarps over them. And the first time I visited was a year later. And they told us that we've been destroyed, we've been bulldozed 26 times in 1 year, every 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
The last time I was there, it was 170 times. And just a few weeks ago, it was demolished for the 184th time. They will not go away. They come back every time. And that's why Eve and Bashir took us there. They wanted us to see the resilience.
Whoa.
Now they get arrested regularly, they get fined, they've been in courts trying to fight the fact that they own the land and they have a right to be there. So it's ongoing. So they've taken us to many other villages too, but I wanted to show you this one especially.
That is extraordinary. Where do they live?
They live in those shacks like that. They come right back up, set them up again, and it usually only about 10 or 15 people stay, but they get support from the others who are elsewhere because they just want to keep somebody on the land.
So that's
powerful.
Those buildings on the right photo, those two structures are the buildings that they're putting up to return. And
they get destroyed every couple of weeks. They come in and get torn apart.
How does somebody support them in helping them do this? I mean, do they? Somebody must pay for the buildings that they put up.
I think they have a lot of support from the Palestinians, especially the Bedouin community. I know the Negev coexistence group are helping them the best they can. There are Israeli activists who are very supportive, and there's internationals are brought there quite often, and so they're they're getting a financial support, but they also need some political support, and that's why they keep going back.
Well, what would happen? What could happen at the best if they got support? Who would support them? And what's the most effective way of giving them help?
Well, one of the Israeli activists, when he brought us there, he said to us, when somebody invades your house, you call the police. He says, but here it's the police that are coming to tear your house down. He says, so you now are the protectors of this house. Go back and tell your people in Canada, the United States, tell your governments to put some pressure on the Israelis to recognize that the Bedouins are full citizens and have a right to their villages. They should not be being destroyed.
What do the Israeli officials say in defending their activities? If the police come and knock it down and they're asked on what basis they're knocking these things down, and these Bedouins obviously are people who've lived there for centuries. Yeah, well, what do they say about who they are and why they don't belong there?
Well, here's what they're doing. They've created towns, 3 or 4 towns in the northern part of the Negev, and they say that's where you belong. And they try to evict them from their 36 villages and force them to go to these towns. The trouble with the towns that they go to is you can't bring your sheep, and you can't grow olives in a city, in a town.
Yeah.
And so they're doing what happened here in Canada when the European colonists came in, they basically pushed the indigenous people off the land into reserves. And that's what's happening in the Negev. It's also what's happening in the West Bank.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we better look at some pictures of other places.
Okay, let me take you and introduce you to Samiha. She's a Palestinian, a young woman, a teenager, and she's part of the youth of Sumud. And they're a group that gathered in the West Bank, in what we call the South Hebron Hills. And they're very, very active. I've known her, believe it or not, since she was a child, because I've been going there for 20 years and she's probably about 18 now. And the youth of Sumud means steadfastness, the youth of steadfastness. I would say the youth of persistent resistance, like the Bedouins.
Mm-hmm.
And here's something they've done. And this is how it began back in May of 2017. In the village of Sarura, it's a small village, and a small number of people living there, maybe about 30 or 40 people. And the Israeli army decided that they needed a firing zone. And so they evicted the people from this village and several other villages. And that was maybe 15 years ago. And so it was empty. So what the youth of Samud want to do is go back and reoccupy those villages and live in them again. Mm-hmm. And on this particular day, they brought all kinds of Palestinians from all over. They brought lots of Jewish Israelis who were peacemakers. And there was a whole contingent of American Jews who came over. And 200 people, you can see them. And they repopulated this village and they began to renovate it so that it could be relived in again. And as you can imagine, their active resistance had a military response. I love that top picture. There's a Palestinian woman and a Jewish American woman sitting side by side. Mm-hmm. And her banner says, "This American Jew supports justice for Palestine. Tear down the wall. Free all the political prisoners. Return the stolen land." Mm-hmm. And you can see below the response of the army was to come in and tear gas them and chase them out. And they confiscated anything they could find. But when the army left, they came back. And over a month's time, it happened several times. They would be chased out and they'd come back. And I've been going there now for a couple of years. And this is a year ago, 2019. That's Samita. You can see her behind one of the people there and another youth of Samud. They're leading us to the town. They call it the Freedom Camp now. And if you look at that bottom left picture, it's a cave. And actually the people in this town all lived in caves. And you say, well, that's really primitive, but no, it isn't. They're cool in the summer and they're warm in the winter.
Really?
So what they did. Mm-hmm.
And these are natural caves?
They're natural caves, but the stone inside is soft, so you can go in and hollow it out, and you can create rooms and make the ceiling higher and things like that. So that's what they did in this cave. And look on the right, when we visited, this was in 2019, and they really rehabilitated the cave, as you can see. Uh-huh. And the original family who owned the cave have actually come back and taken ownership.
Wow, how lovely!
Yeah, and they don't all come back and live there, but they always try to keep some people there. And the youth of Samud try to always stay there too. Uh-huh. And of course, they get raided regularly. A lot of the youth of Samud have been arrested and fined, but they come back. It's called Samud. It's called persistent resistance. Wow. So this young woman and all the youth that are working with her, and I have to say I've known quite a few of them because we had a team in the town that she's living in for years. I was on that team quite often, and it's a real nonviolent resistance to the stealing of the land. It's really powerful.
How many caves are there?
In that particular village, 6 or 7, and they've already rehabilitated 2 of them, and they're working on a 3rd right now, I think.
And what needs to be done to rehabilitate them?
To go in and clean them up, expand them a little bit. It's they hammer and chisel and that sort of thing, and then put a good door in it. You can see there's a good door been put on there, and because they've been abandoned now for years, so
wow,
it's good. It's powerful.
Uh-huh.
Okay, one more story.
Okay.
And this is the last story I'll tell you. There's so many I could tell, but this is a good one. This is Sami Awad. He's Palestinian. He's Christian. He lives in Bethlehem. His uncle is Mubarak Awad, who was one of the leaders of the nonviolent first Intifada.
Uh-huh.
And because he also had dual citizenship in the United States, they deported him and banned him from ever coming back.
Sami?
No, Mubarak.
Mubarak lives in the U.S. now. He's a friend of mine. I mean, not.
Well, this is his nephew.
But Mubarak does live in the U.S. and has for years.
Yes.
What happened?
He was banned in 2019. Whenever the first Intifada was on, I can't remember. It was probably about 1980, 1990, somewhere in there.
You know, I should remember that too, because I was at the United Nations. I was across the street from the United Nations. There's a building there for a lot of organizations that are, concerned charitable organizations. And there was it may have been the Quakers, I'm not sure.
Uh-huh.
And Mubarak had just arrived in the U.S. From Israel, having been expelled, I believe, from Israel.
That's right.
And he gave a talk, and I went to the first talk that he gave.
Wow. I've met him once too at a gathering where they were peacemakers were having a conference, but he wouldn't remember me. I don't think so.
So but somehow I don't remember the story of how he got back in, and in fact, I didn't remember that he'd been excluded from the U.S. But I know that his education, he was educated at I believe, a Christian college someplace in the Midwest in the U.S. and brought his training in nonviolence, and he was a psychologist. He was doing kind of therapy with the Palestinians until he realized, well, what they needed wasn't therapy, it was political support, and he organized, I think that Intifada was largely his doing, that very nonviolent Intifada. It was wonderful. Exactly. The stories of the things they did, the inventiveness of how to persist in and organize the community in the face of oppression. It was one of the inspiring stories that I remember hearing. Yeah. Beautiful.
Well, I'm sure he inspired his nephew, Sami, because he founded Holy Land Trust. And I asked him, Sami, why do you call it Holy Land Trust? He says, because that's what's missing. There's no trust here between the peoples. So that's his work. So we worked with him, CPT worked with him all the time. We did a lot of nonviolence trainings at Bethlehem University with him and with other groups. And he did a lot of every Friday he would take a group out and they would stand trying to stop the wall being created around Bethlehem. But what I want to talk to you about today is this last thing he's been doing recently. And he calls it sharing victim narratives and then moving beyond. And here he's talking to a group here. I'm in the group and our group but there's also Jewish people in that group from the States in there as well. and he's explaining it to us. And he said that, if we can get the Israelis and the Palestinians to recognize and acknowledge each other's suffering and trauma, then we can move beyond it. So he himself, Sammy, went to Auschwitz for a week. And he was there every day. And he saw the young people coming down from Israel. When you graduate from high school at 18, you're immediately conscripted into the army. So they'd bring them down and he'd watch them go in, and they were full of energy and lots of fun and things. And they came out in tears and sad. And then he said the leaders would sit them down and he'd say, now you know. Now you know why you have to be armed, why we have to have, every one of you has to be a soldier, because never again must this happen to us. And so we began to realize how the Israelis were internalizing the trauma and how it explained a lot of their reactions to what was going on. So he wanted to find an Israeli leader, not one that he already knew, who already was a peacemaker, but one who was kind of a rabid settler. But find a way to get someone who could then understand the same trauma that the Palestinians had suffered. And so it was recommended to talk to Rabbi Hanan Schlesinger. I've never met him, but he told us the story. And he's a settler, and he's rabid. He's a dyed-in-the-wool settler. He believes everything about it being a settler. So he agreed to meet with him in Jerusalem in a coffee shop. And Sammy said, I didn't know how to start the conversation. He says, but it didn't matter, because as soon as Rabbi Hanan sat down, he started. He says, 1948, the founding of Israel was a miracle. In 1967, when we took over the West Bank and Gaza, that was the completion of the miracle. And God's promise of the land to the Jewish people is eternal. And Sammy said his heart just sank. And he says, oh my God, where are we going to go? But then he said, we have a covenant with God that we are to be a light to all the nations. And then he said, especially the Palestinians, because they're our nearest neighbor. And he was quite willing to understand the trauma of the Palestinians. From the Nakba, being kicked out of Israel, 750,000, and then the taking and the military occupation of Gaza and West Bank, which has gone over for 50 years now. And so the two of them were able to get together and to realize that you have to let go of the trauma narratives, both groups, and come up with a new narrative of living together in peace. Wow. And so they've begun to talk and they've begun to get groups together. So I haven't been able to get back there in the last year to find out how it's going, but powerful, powerful peacemakers.
Wow. Well, my word. I immediately want to explore the thinking of this man, Hanan Schlesinger.
I think you can Google him and you might be able to find some things.
Well, how does he combine these various ideas? If 1948 was a miracle for him, it wasn't a miracle for the Palestinians.
It was a Nakba, it was a disaster.
Exactly. So how does he put those two concepts together? If it was a miracle, why in what way is he to be a light to all nations? What does he want to have happen to the Palestinians? I mean, it's like a complete contradiction in terms, the two ideas are totally contradictory, I would think. So how does he?
I don't know, because I haven't talked to Hanan. I've only talked to Sammy Awad. So
Uh-huh.
I don't know the other side of the story. But the fact that Sammy is able to keep meeting with him and to develop a new narrative of
Hmm.
where it can go from here. And you know, Jonathan Katab and Jeff Halper have both written books on, you know, a one-state solution of coming together to live together where everybody is equal,
Hmm.
equal rights and equal justice and peace. So I think something like will happen. I don't know if Meadow, if you and I will live to see it, but you know, I
Uh,
think that's the future.
wow. Well, this is something that I'd like to explore further. Maybe I will have a chance, someone, one way or another, to do that. Maybe I could even reach out to some of these people and talk to them by Zoom.
You can for sure.
Well, let's see if I can set something up. And that's certainly something to look forward to. Um,
Beautiful.
so maybe with your help, I can do that. That would be
Okay,
very,
I have
very interesting.
contacted. I can
Uh,
get you in contact with all of them. Except
uh,
I've never, I've never been in contact with Rabbi Schlesinger. He's the only one I've shown you today that I haven't had contact with.
well, I would go through somebody else anyway. I wouldn't immediately go to him and say, "How can you hold
Yeah,
those two ideas when they're
yeah,
contradictory?"
exactly.
I would do a little preparation before doing that. So this is a wonderful introduction
Good.
to the region. I've never been to Israel or Palestine, of course. I've traveled pretty widely, but frankly, I never wanted to go there. I just, it was. I don't like to go to a place where I think I'm not going to like the people, you know, and I think I have such strong feelings that there's a huge injustice going on there. And I don't know how I could even, um, hold my tongue. I would have too many opinions. So I've never gone because I know I might make more trouble than I would solve.
Well, if you came on our pilgrimage, you'd discover that the people we meet with are peacemakers and who are,
Sure. Yeah.
and they're nonviolent. There are lots of people who are not nonviolent. And like Sami Awad has told us that there are Palestinians who won't talk to him because he's a sellout talking to the Israelis. And when you talk to, I'm sure when you talk to Hanan Schlesinger, he's got all kinds of settlers are saying, "Why are you talking to those terrorists?" You know, so I mean, it's they have a hard work to do.
Why don't you shut off your screen sharing so we can look at each other to say goodbye? There
Okay,
you go. Because I want to thank you for this and have a chance to look at you full screen to do
okay,
this. This has been fun. I have to be careful about using that word fun because there's certainly it's fun talking with you, but it's very sobering to see the kinds of situations that you're dealing with. And I want to express my gratitude to you for being able to go into a place and to take people and to expose people who aren't familiar with that situation. So bless you. Thank you so much,
thank,
Father.
thank you very much, and thanks for giving me a chance to speak.
Okay, it's been wonderful. And I hope we have more contact. Maybe when the pandemic is over, we will find ourselves in the same room. I'm
Okay,
sure
very good.
I would bet anything that we have been in the same room dozens of times at
I suspect
meetings
so.
over the years without ever actually having anybody point to you and say, "That's Father Bob."
Probably true.
Okay, thank you and have a great
Okay,
day.
you're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Bye.
And I will let my friends know when you let me know how they can get and
I will.
watch
Sure,
this.
immediately. Fine. Thank you.